Hey gang, how you doing? LZ here, coming to you. Wanted to talk about Sony and PlayStation and E3 and quite the stir that has been caused in the last week with Sony's announcement that they will not be attending the largest game conference in the United States. And there's been quite a bit of concern on Twitter, YouTube, etc., Reset Arrow, your normal hotspots of gaming Discord about Sony's absence and the potential meeting, why that could be. And frankly, I want to talk about that and kind of give some of the reasons why this might be, knowing what I do about the industry and having been to E3 at least one time. I don't really think that it's much of a reason for concern at all. I'll preface it with that, but kind of let's maybe talk realistically about some of the reasons why Sony is not going to be attending E3 in 2019. So first off, let's get what we know out of the way. PlayStation 5 is all but confirmed, right? We've been hearing rumors from every single direction that PlayStation 5 is coming. I think, if anything, the hints from Twitter and sources and developers, I mean, even the very fact that Bethesda is developing games that they have already announced for next-gen consoles, finger quotes, is enough evidence to know that there are next-gen consoles coming. It's already fair to say that PlayStation 5 is well on its way. So this isn't Sony bowing out of the console war. This isn't Sony taking a different position or abandoning its powerhouse consoles. If anything, we've seen Sony in its arrogance kind of double down on these things. And arrogant Sony is not really the best Sony. We've seen that in the past with the launch of the PlayStation 3 and sort of the hubris that came with that. We all know how that went. And then, of course, we've seen it kind of dip in and out with the cross-play stuff with Fortnite and things like that, which took them forever to come around on. So it would be surprising to not see Sony sort of jump into the, hey, you loved PlayStation 4, you're going to love PlayStation 5, so you might as well get a second job because this baby's going to cost $800. Now, that's clearly hyperbole, but there's no reason that they're leaving or bowing out or trying something wildly different, because the PlayStation 4 was an overwhelming success, selling upwards of, 80, 90 million projected units worldwide. I think I read that on the internet once. That could be wrong, but that's kind of what I saw a couple of days ago. But a couple of the different reasons why I think, at least the top two reasons why I think Sony is bowing out of E3 this year is, the first big one is, folks, we are about to drive off of the cliff of Generation 8 consoles, right? We already know that Xbox is working on the Xbox 2 or whatever. We know that's coming. We know that developers are already making games. And Sony doesn't really have too much left to show as far as a first-party offering goes. We have Death Stranding. We have The Last of Us 2. We have Ghost of Tsushima. These are all games that are coming 2019, 2020, right? So they still have a bit of an offering when it comes to their first-party titles. So no need to worry about those. And, of course, your third parties are coming out heavily for PlayStation 4 already. You're going to see your Modern Warfare 4 or whatever it is that Infinity Ward is bringing for Call of Duty next year on PlayStation 4. That's going to be marketed heavily. There's probably going to be another Battlefield game, right? I mean, so generation that we're currently in is already heated up, and it's not going to cool off with any time soon, right? And these console publishers and makers, they like to sort of continue to sell these consoles even after the new generation has continued, right? And that's where in the first year or so you start to see sort of cross-generation games, right? You'll probably see Modern Warfare 4 or whatever Call of Duty is coming this year launching on both consoles. You'll see ports from the PlayStation 4 and PlayStation 3 and PlayStation 2 era being pushed to Generation 5 or the next generation, Generation 9, for reselling purposes and things like that. This is nothing new. So really, it almost seems like to me with PlayStation canceling their PlayStation experience this year, because let's be honest, last year's PlayStation experience was much to be desired. And their E3 performance this year, while it wasn't a terrible performance and while it wasn't certainly their worst ever, you could tell that they were struggling a bit to have as impactful show as we are used to them having, right? I mean, we got quite a bit of good stuff. Resident Evil 2 Remake was revealed. Last of Us 2 had a great showing. Ghost of Tsushima was awesome. So those things are coming, right? But this sounds like to me that Sony is starting to cool their first-party studios off on development for PlayStation 4, and they're already well underway making launch titles for PlayStation 5. That's going to be probably landing in 2020 sometimes. Or they might just have a mic drop moment sometime in 2019 and launch the PlayStation 4 in holiday of 2019, right? That seems unrealistic to me, but it's not uncommon to see these console makers rush to the gate to be first, right? We saw it last gen and the gen before that with the Xbox 360 launching first, with the Wii launching first, and getting a good head start on these competitive markets, right? So it's fair to say that really it almost seems like Sony has kind of distanced themselves with Generation 8 development and are full swing developing games for the next generation. And really, you don't want to be Microsoft or Nintendo that has been showing the same games off for a number of years, right? Especially Microsoft. Microsoft, I think for the past few E3s, bless their heart, I love Microsoft. They have had some of the most powerful E3 showings in the last handful of years since Phil Spencer took over. He is a wonderful, wonderful lead. He has turned the ship around for Xbox, and he has done a wonderful job. And I think that I think those 2 points go head to head because Microsoft, believe it or not, Sony fanboys, Microsoft is in an excellent position to eat Sony's lunch next gen. They're already planning for it. The Xbox One X, I think, is a wonderful console. I don't own one, but gosh, even just the marketing aspect of improved backwards compatibility, improved graphical performance and things like that for old games, and 4K 60 and just way better performance than my PlayStation Pro. They are hungry to take back the reins for next gen, and I really think they're going to do that. I love my Xbox. It's all right. It's my Halo machine, pretty much. That's all I do on it. I've been primarily PlayStation 4 this gen for obvious reasons, because PlayStation 4 has been the console to play on this time around. That is objectively the truth. And while Xbox has done quite a bit to kind of turn things around, we all have to admit that the Xbox One is a little crippled by the end of this generation, right? So Phil Spencer and crew are going to go crazy with taking this thing over next gen. So Sony, I know that I think that Sony realizes that, and they're going to do everything they can to counteract that. Phil Spencer and the Microsoft Games division, they have crazy momentum. They're buying up studios left and right. They are not going to have an issue with not having games again next generation. That's not going to happen. And I'm willing to bet that Microsoft is willing to dump millions in exclusive deals again, because it really wasn't worth them investing too much money in exclusives for a console that doesn't quite have the same base that the PlayStation 4 does. But I digress. That's the big thing, is that I think Sony is just prepping, and they don't want to just bring out everything, right? They probably don't have much to show when it comes to PlayStation 4 software, because honestly, I just don't think there is that much to show, right? You've got a few big, powerful games, like 4 big, powerful games coming next year, right? You've got Death Stranding, Last of Us, Ghost of Tsushima. You've got Days Gone, which got delayed because, honestly, it just looked really rough around the edges. So they're going to focus on putting those games out, and then they're going to focus on putting the majority of their development dollars and developers and power into the next generation. That's the number one reason why I think this is they're just sort of ramping down on things and preparing. So you have plenty to play and enjoy on those consoles already, but they're going to take a year off, essentially, is what it sounds like. The next thing, having attended E3 is quite an expensive venture. And of course, Sony is one not to pull back on the wallet when it comes to E3 experiences, right? They have a good chunk of the show floor. They always put on quite a fancy show because they have every right to, right? They are the console of this generation. They had quite a few megaton shows in the last few years. I mean, even just the show where they are announcing Final Fantasy VII Remake, Shenmue 3, that show is basically will go down as one of the best shows of all time. So they do put a lot into these. So it is quite an expenditure to blow a ton of money on E3 when you've got 4 games to show and maybe some exclusive deals. And they really haven't ruled out not having a kind of show for 2019 at all. They just said it's not going to be E3. And now, let's be honest, my experience with Sony and E3 2017 was not the best one, right? The conference was okay. I think God of War is going to sweep for Game of the Year this year, and I agree with that. I think God of War is fantastic. I can't believe I slept that long on that game. I picked it up quite a bit early, and I kind of regret that because it is fantastic. But it is an expensive show, and it's an expensive show to show up and not do anything. I mean, Nintendo is kind of checked out of the big stage presence beforehand anyway, right? It's costly, and let's be honest, during the Wii period, their shows were kind of a meme, right? Especially with your Cammy Dunaways and your just sort of cringeworthy performances, right? But the Wii was kind of a different console for a different kind of player. So I really can't blame them for that, but it's not really Nintendo's venue anymore unless they want to start bringing the Reginator out and getting mature again, right? So it almost might be sort of a check on E3 itself, right? Because EA started doing their own thing during E3. Microsoft did their own thing last year. They're having conferences, they're making shows, but in 2017... it was really a show for your third parties, right? Your publishers, your Bethesdas, your Square Enixes, those things. So it was an enjoyable experience, and now the dynamic of E3 has changed drastically, where the general population that are not media or developers are invited to attend these shows now. So that dynamic is wildly different when it comes to how E3 is run. So I am almost wondering if these publishers and these console makers are sort of protesting that in a way. Because Sony's show in 2017, I'm not sure what it was in 2018, but their show floor presence was great, but it was an absolute cluster trying to get in, play games, right? The only way that you can get in was be a member of the media, or B, use an app to sort of solidify your position, sort of like an appointment. But every time the app would open up for new appointments, it would crash like a 747. So it would be kind of bad. And maybe they just can't manage it that well. Those lines were 8 hours long. It was horrifying. Thankfully, Crystal Red Punks and I, when we were at the show, we could, because of our business licenses, get to some booths pretty quick before everybody else to at least get some hands-on for whatever it is we wanted to do. Check out my E3 documentary here or in the description below for our time there. It was wonderful if you're ever considering going. But I think this really leaves into question what E3 and the future of E3 is going to be. And we've been here before, right? E3 has tried making drastic changes before. Publishers have tried making drastic changes with their presence and how they do things at E3 before. This is nothing new. The industry is evolving. But Sony really hasn't said what they're going to do for 2019. So, you know, the drama on the internet about Sony not showing up is a little much. And I think we shouldn't go out of our way to be unhappy with this decision too quick. So let me know what your thoughts are. Put it in the comment section below. Like and subscribe, etc., etc. And I'll see y'all later.
Yep. Y'all gonna be here a while. Danny O'Dwyer, look at my nose. Hey, who's that? Danny O'Dwyer from old GameStop. He's doing no clip now. Hey guys, around this way. Oh, sorry.